To explore the trajectory of AI and what is on the horizon, please welcome David Danks, Professor of Data Science, Philosophy, and Policy at UC San Diego, Elham Tabassi, Director of the Artificial Intelligence and Emerging Technology Initiative at Brookings Institution, David Stout, CEO of WebAI, and Ramayya Krishnan, Dean of the Heinz College of Information Systems and Public Policy, and William W. and Ruth F. Cooper, Professor of Management Science and Information Systems at Carnegie Mellon University. The conversation will be moderated by Emma Anderson, California Technology Editor at POLITICO.
We'll go ahead and get started. I am not Emma Anderson. I am Stephen Overly. I'm here filling in for my colleague, Emma. I host Politico's weekly tech podcast. And we're here today closing out the Central Stage programming, talking about the future of AI. So 40 minutes to predict the future. I think we can handle it. I'm excited to be joined by an expert panel to really dig into what I think is a fascinating and important topic. I mean, we've seen over the last year a tremendous leap in the advancement of AI. There are still a lot of very big outstanding questions about how to regulate, govern, manage this technology. And so that's what I want to dig into with our panelists today. Before we get to the future, though, I think we need to do sort of a stock take on today, because I feel like I hear more and more skepticism or disappointment about where we are with AI, that the AI promised land is sort of farther off than a lot of folks expected. David Stout, I'll come to you first with this question. I mean, how do you respond to those skeptics who say it hasn't lived up to the hype?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure a lot of people have opinions on this. Eric Schmidt was just talking about this. I think it's one of the most underhyped industries in technologies in the world. And what AI is doing today far exceeds what we anticipated to be doing 5 years ago. And the trend we're on and the discoveries we're making are, to me, more meaningful than some of the greatest discoveries we did in the internet era. I still don't see a pets.com of AI yet. I mean, a lot of these companies are really creating tremendous value and doing things that are not a small feat, like what OpenAI has done just from a data management perspective to train these large models is something that just a few years ago would have been impossible. AI is going to be, to me, when we mix this with classical and quantum computing, going to be something that's fundamentally changing to our civilization. It's going to be viewed as the new industrial revolution. It's going to be the electricity, as Andrew Noog said.
I'll come to the other David. Is AI as transformational today as you expected it to be?
No. Today, it is not as transformational as I expected it to be, in part because I think we haven't figured out how to take advantage of AI yet. We're still in the days where it looks cool and people are happy to jump online and do it, play with it, but we're only, I think, starting to scratch the surface of the capabilities that can either be provided or accelerated by AI systems. And in that sense, we're in the early days when the car was just barely faster than the horse and we hadn't rebuilt entire cities around cars. So I do think that there's going to be a transformation that comes. I think we're perhaps on the cusp of starting to realize some of it. Certainly we see this in the university setting quite a bit. But I do think there's quite a lot of hype right now. And in particular, where I think the hype results is people underestimating just how much a human contributes to the process. So when I interact with a ChatGPT or a Llama 3, I'm doing an enormous amount of cognitive labor. It's putting things out there that I interpret as if they came from a human, that I'm the one generating the prompts. And I think right now we're underestimating the amount of human cognitive labor that's making these cool things happen. The transformation comes when that human cognitive labor isn't necessarily needed anymore.
Elham, I'll come to you. You had a long career in government. You're now working at Brookings, but until recently, you were the chief AI advisor at NIST. And so I want to ask you a newsy question, because we just saw yesterday the announcement that the Commerce Department is rebranding the US AI Safety Institute. And there is this growing sense, I've heard, that this concept of AI safety has been politicized, or it's come to include certain political viewpoints. I'm curious on your reaction to that change, but also what that signals as we look to the future about how we will govern or manage this technology in the US.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So I think the new name for those that haven't... I broke it.
Mic check.
Can you hear me? No. Is there another microphone to use?
We have a...
The mic's coming.
Okay.
All right.
No?
Technology causes the problems and saves the day. Right? I think
Is it on? Okay, very good. Thank you. Sorry about this. I'm really good on breaking things. So for those of you that haven't seen the news, it is renamed to Center for AI Standard and Innovation. And I think double downing on standard is a good sign. And I think one of the biggest gap that we have with AI to get it to the transformative stage that David is talking about is actually making sure that AI is functioning in a reliable and trustworthy manner. And that basically gets into testing the systems, making sure that they are doing what they're supposed to do, and their unintended negative consequences is minimized. So, and for doing that, we really need standards. You know, you see lights here all around us. They all have been certified for safety, and there has been long, years of research to figure out exactly what to test and how to test to mature that field to get it to the place that we can go to store and buy it and have the confidence in this. So I think emphasis on standard is a good thing. And it's also very much aligned with, kind of National Institute for Standards and Technology. And here I have to just say disclaimer that NIST doesn't develop standards by itself, work with the whole community to develop that. And I'll just stop there.
Krishnan, I'll come to you now, and I'm curious to hear the other panelists weigh in on this question as well, but I want you to maybe start taking us into the future, because we have seen this, what feels like a rapid advancement in AI, and that's obviously only what we know through public announcements. I'm curious from your perspective if you think that will continue. Will AI accelerate? Will it plateau? What's your outlook?
So, first of all, good afternoon. I think I want to start with 2 data points and then build on what's been said. Anthropic released an economic index called the Anthropic AI Economic Index that uses data about the prompts to the Claude chatbot to determine what roles, what occupations in the economy are actually using AI. And what they found was 4% of the US economy has jobs or occupations where 75% of the tasks are exposed to AI, meaning relatively small number of occupations are actually using AI. But customer service and software development are 2 occupations which have a relatively higher exposure to AI. So I think first and foremost, I think we should have a mechanism like an observatory like the Anthropic AI Economic Index to constantly monitor to see what's actually happening with regard to adoption of AI and the extent to which it's actually having an impact on jobs, on the economy. Related to that, I think is the question of how exactly is AI being adopted and for what purposes is it being adopted. I think here it's important to keep in mind that measurement science and evaluation, the points that Elham made, are critical for organizations to decide if they want to actually deploy it in a trusted and trustworthy fashion. And I think that's been a big friction that's holding up the adoption and use of AI. So to your point about segueing from where we are to the future, as we have a better understanding both of existing and to be created technologies, I think we need a robust measurement science and evaluation capability to allow for organizations to deploy these technologies in a trusted and trustworthy fashion. The last point I'll make is AI is like any other technology. Technology alone doesn't realize value. You need to have complements. And technology combined with other investments, these could be business process engineering or re-engineering. It could be retraining, reskilling. there's a bunch of complementary kinds of investments firms have to make to truly realize value from AI. I think you're going to see that actually play itself out. So rather than posit what exactly a particular future of AI is going to be, it's going to be driven by some combination of these things. And I think these are the elements: technology, complementary investments, and a foundation of measurement science and evaluation.
Anyone want to?
I will, yeah, I just want to put a finer point on what Krishnan was saying, that, quoting something from the AI science paper that came out at the scientific panel in September. AI doesn't happen to us. The conversations that we have, the decisions that we make is sort of determine where it's going. So, and I don't think the question is that is AI going to change our world? As Krishnan and David said, we are already seeing that it's changing it. But it has to be, we have to shift the conversation to who will guide the trustworthy development and responsible use of that. And for that, we need more diverse group of people with diverse background and perspective, technology developers, community that study the impact of the technology, to look at this and kind of come up with that intellectual space to answer this question, that how it's changing our society, and make sure that it uplifts everyone as it transforms our technology. And I just also want to put a plug on my home institution, Brookings, that they're doing a lot of good research on looking at the impact of AI on labor market and how the jobs of futures are going to be changed.
So let's dig into that. It's not hard to find predictions these days about the future of AI. Lots of people have them, and I thought we could use some of them as a jumping off point for some of our conversation today. Starting with recently, the CEO of Anthropic AI made headlines with this prediction that by the year 2030, we could see unemployment climb to 20% because of artificial intelligence. That was his outlook, and he had concerns that business leaders and politicians were not prepared for that reality, what it means for the economy and for people. David, maybe I'll come to you first because you're a fellow business leader. Does that sound overblown? Does that sound cautious or accurate? What's your outlook?
I think there's varying opinions on what the actual application of AI is going to look like. And right now with Anthropic and these general models, when someone like Dario says that, I don't know who he's talking about. Like, that's a very broad statement. And what I'm seeing in the industry pretty universally with the enterprises in the private sector as well as in the public sector, these general models are not solving the problem still. And this comes back to benchmarks, and we're not able to assess these things. So what I'm seeing is a lot of industries need hyper-contextual models to get there, and they need hyper-contextual data, and this is the data that the private sector has. And I would think to make that claim and have real grounds, he would have to be solving at least 100% of someone's problem today. That's the way I would look at it. I'm not seeing a ton of evidence of that, maybe in like poem writing or things like that, but like these, if you're taking apart a Pratt & Whitney engine and reassembling it, is Anthropic going to do it perfectly today? I'm just highly skeptical that that's true. So that's where I would frame that.
I think the piece that he's getting at that's right is we're likely in the next few years to see particular sectors experience massive job loss within a sector. And I mean, just to, hypothetical numbers, right? If we have a sector where 500,000 jobs are lost, if that happens over a 20-year span, which has happened with lots of previous technologies, we socially, politically, economically know how to absorb those job losses. I mean, it's obviously incredibly tragic for those people. There are communities that get left behind as a result. But in some sense, it's not something we haven't seen before. I think the worry with AI is we're seeing companies say, we don't need 50 people to do this job, we need 5. We don't need 100 people, we need 20. And so if we have 500,000 jobs eliminated from a sector in 20 weeks, maybe even 20 days, we don't know socially or societally how to adapt to that. So I think that's what he's getting at that's right. It's not so much the 20% unemployment across the entire US economy, I have no idea how we would even begin to assess that. But I do think we're going to see sectors that experience very rapid shrinkage in terms of the employment opportunities. We're already seeing this in software engineering. Entry-level coding is just massively shrunk in the last 6 months. And that's the piece that I worry that our policymakers and economic leaders are not prepared for.
Krishnan, I'll come to you because I think that idea sort of turns on its head a lot of our preconceived notions of like, you get a good education, you'll have stability, you get a good paying job, like that's the road to prosperity. And the industries that will be active first are workers who have well-paying jobs, have at least college degrees, if not more. I mean, is that the future we can expect? And if so, what are the implications of that?
So there are two things that I think are worth sort of doubling down on what David said. So at Carnegie Mellon, recently, Tom Mitchell, a colleague of mine, with Eric Brynolfsson from Stanford, released a National Academies report on AI and the future of work. And I think a critical component of that had to do with a view of work as consisting of work consists of tasks. Tasks require skills. And as technology gets better, the question is which tasks get exposed or impacted. And this goes back to my point about the Anthropic AI Economic Index. I think it's really important for policymakers to build the capacity and the muscles to try and learn how to potentially respond to changes in ways in which technology is going to substitute for or complement human activity. That's number one. And I think it's a combination of understanding where technology is going to have an impact and what skill sets people are going to have to be reskilled for to adapt to an AI-first world. The question is, are we over-indexing on AI's capability such that you would expect a 20% unemployment rate? But whether it's 20% or not, I think we should prepare ourselves for the need for reskilling and upskilling in a new world. So that's the first point. And I think for that, we need both the capacity to observe what's happening, not speculate, but actually have data on actually what's happening. That's going to come from administrative data from government. It's going to come from private sources, like what jobs are being advertised for, what kinds of jobs are likely being affected by AI, things of that nature. That's going to be public-private. So we need public-private partnerships to have this understanding of what's actually happening into the labor market. With regard to your question related to education, I think it's indeed the case that at educational institutions, we are having the same conversation about how should AI, the impact of AI be figured into both what it is we are doing right now in terms of how we teach, but also what we teach. And importantly, how do we teach students how to constantly teach themselves? How do you learn to learn? Because you're constantly going to have to learn and teach yourself new things. And I think this is the most critical thinking and learning to learn are going to be two really important features that we're going to impart to everybody with respect to the type of education we're going to offer.
There's another take I read recently. This one comes from Yoshua Bengio, who's a computer scientist. He's considered one of the godfathers of AI. I've been fortunate to interview him a couple of times. He just this week launched a new nonprofit focused on building honest AI. And his argument is that he's seeing more AI models that are deceptive, that have the capacity to manipulate people. David, I'll come to you. I mean, is that a real concern?
Yes and no. So the no part of it, I'll start with the more optimistic, is that the kinds of systems that people typically look to and say, this is exhibiting deceptive behavior or trying to blackmail people, those systems, by and large, are not actually making any real inferences about the people they're engaging with. So when I deceive you, for humans, lying to somebody isn't just saying something that's not true, or saying something you wish was true, but you don't know if it's true. It's saying something that you know is false to change someone else's mind. And right now, we don't actually have much evidence that that's the way these systems are engaging with users. So the optimistic view is to say they're exhibiting behaviors that we humans might be deceived by, but to attribute intentionality to the system, I think, is a mistake. Now, the concern is, if people are consistently being fooled, deceived, led to behave in ways that don't serve their values, then that's a bad thing, right? I mean, we don't want systems that get people to do terrible things, whether the system intended it or not. So I do think that Yoshua is right, that we've got to find ways to have systems that are better, to use a different language terminology, value aligned, that they're aligned with what it is that matters to me, that they're able to understand what I intend and what matters to me and act in accordance with that. Sure, yes, we should want that. We just have to acknowledge that that is going to be a substantially more sophisticated AI system than what we're interacting with right now. Right now, when they try to deceive you, it's actually not hard to recognize it and overcome it. The worry is that the next generation of AI systems, if they have the ability to know what matters to me, we'd better make sure that the guardrails are in place for them to consistently protect what matters to me, not undermine what matters to me.
Elham, I want to ask you about those guardrails, because this is something I think a lot about as a journalist, candidly, how in the future we are going to distinguish fact from mis and disinformation. Because as we look at new AI models, especially image generators like the new VO3 and some of these other models, I mean, we can build highly personalized, highly individualized realities, right, if we want to. And I guess I question, in that context, I mean, what's to be done about that, and who is kind of the arbiter of truth in that future?
Thanks for the question. Before that, I want to just say that in the question about the impact of AI in labor market, I think the magic word that Krishnan used is data, and we don't have that data. You start the question by saying that's prediction, and I think there's a lot more work to be done to harness the right data to be able to answer that question. Back to your questions about the models are being advancing so rapidly. 5-6 years ago, they couldn't even generate a paragraph of coherent text. Now they can, as you said, generate videos, very realistic looking, and build those sort of realities that how we can check that. Again, this goes to the bigger question of the benchmarking and evaluations and what they're doing, and the goal that they have been designed for what they need to do. So it also goes back to the persuasion and question that you had for David. I think that should be part of the benchmark and evaluations, that is the AI is actually honest with you and doing what you're trying to do. Answering your questions from the angle of provenance and synthetic content detection, this has been a question for a very long time, and I think the community is coming to the realization that marking authenticity is a lot easier than trying to figure out if it was generated or not. So there is all of these things, and industry-led standards were kind of show the provenance of where this piece of media or information, text or video are coming from, and allow to sort of backtrack it to figure out if it was authentically generated, human-generated, or generated by us.
David, at WebAI, you're building enterprise-grade artificial intelligence, right? I mean, in the workplace today with humans, there are people who will tell the boss what they want to hear, all right, whether it's true or not. I mean, how do you address these questions of honesty and integrity in what you're doing?
Yeah, that's great. One, we need better ways to score these models. We need arenas where we can assess how models perform across a wide variety of tasks, not just MMLU Pro and like these very generic benchmarks. It just doesn't tell you a lot about the model and how it's going to perform in any kind of like real world interaction outside of these sciences or AGI benchmarks. So that'd be one. Outside of that, for us, it's fundamental to get the AI in the hands of our partners. So we don't think this like ivory tower structure for AI is the right way to handle this problem. We think that giving enterprises access and explainability in how the models work and how they fundamentally engage with the data is key for them to get systems they trust. If you're going to engage with something and you're going to have it doing something that's mission critical for your organization, you have the right to understand why it's getting to the conclusion it is and why it does that time over time and why it might change. And so delivering a system where people can have explainability and modification in a place where they feel like they can import their data in privately and engage with it is pretty fundamental to create something trustworthy. And what we're seeing is people will engage with these models in ways that they wouldn't engage with something that was hosted or owned by someone else, because they feel comfortable, interacting with this and modifying it. So between benchmarks, better arenas, and explainability, those are the keys to get enterprises to trust AI solutions. And at the end of the day, these code gen tools and things like that are working in chatbots and customer support, because those are not solutions that require 100% accuracy. So for a coder, if you can increase their workflow, awesome, they're going to pay for it. If I was to hand cursor to someone who doesn't write code, they'd probably be really disappointed that it's not building the app they told it to build. So I think there's a big difference there. And in these enterprise use cases that are very deep and contextual, trust is critical, because these are not AI experts that are adopting it, and they need to know that this is going to handle something like reassembling an engine or helping their mechanics solve a problem, and do it in a way that's very knowledge-based rather than persuasion. And what we've seen in some of these models, they're not trying to lie, but they answer questions in ways that almost convince the worker that they might be wrong. And there's no real data supporting that. So getting as far away from that as possible, focusing on the knowledge, driving that explainability for our customers.
Can I just add a quick comment on this? I think, without a doubt, there has to be work done on improving the technology. And I think the examples were given with regard to humans interacting with AIs in the manner of chatbots, but we should also think about agents interacting with one another. In all of this, I think there's also a human element with regard to believability, with regard to trust, and how do we educate people not to believe everything they see online, learn how to sort of query, to push back, to probe, to gather information from multiple sources to arrive at a conclusion rather than just rely on one piece of information from one bot. I think this is, you asked a question about education. I think this is a K through 12 kind of thing that it's almost like the civics of AI, if you will, that we need to sort of impart to kids at a very young age. I think you're beginning to see this in Scandinavian countries where they're beginning to impart this kind of education. So I would certainly add that to this aspect, not only of technology becoming better at explaining, of being more trusted, but ensuring that the consumers are equally sort of well prepared to use these tools.
I think that's a really good point, and it kind of goes into my next question, because we know the future doesn't happen overnight, right? There's a series of steps that get us there. And so I'm curious what those next steps should look like for harnessing the potential of AI while also addressing some of these risks we're talking about. And the last AI prognostication I have comes from none other than the new Pope, Leo the 14th, excuse me, who just this week talked about the dangers to, quote, human dignity, justice, and labor. And so I don't know if we'll have AI divine intervention. It may be up to us mere mortals. So what is, in each of your view, kind of the next step as we sort of make this march to the AI future?
Let me take a quick, I went to Catholic school, I should note. So, I think, a really important issue is having multiple voices taken into account to ensure that deployments of AI, particularly deployments where you have worker voice, efficiency, cost effectiveness, trustworthiness, robustness, it's a multi-criteria kind of problem that it can't be just done by one group trying to figure out an answer to this multi-criteria problem. You do have to have consultative, multi-stakeholder kind of inputs. And the question is, how do we scale that in a way that would allow for us to be much more capable of not only responding to these multiple inputs, but at the same time being able to deploy and learn in this quick response cycle. I think that's something that's very essential to address some of these needs of dignity, justice, and respecting workers, while at the same time getting all the other benefits, the upside that we want with regard to efficiency, productivity, et cetera.
I mean, I think that when we think about next steps, I don't think that they're necessarily, I'm not going to talk about something technical, not because I don't think there are technical things to be done. I think there's a lot of technical next steps that are needed, but I think those are going to happen automatically. Those are going to happen because there are thousands, if not millions, of smart people that are passionate about the technical problems. As the quote from the Pope shows, though, we need to think about the impacts of the technical solutions that we're developing. And there, I think it's very natural to think there's either government regulation or there's hope and pray that the industry self-regulates and doesn't do terrible things. The message that I would want to put forward is there's actually a massive spectrum in between. So we've been talking about benchmarks, best practices, community engagement, stakeholder engagement, making it a little bit easier for the market to push back. And I think one of the challenges that we really have, and the next step that I would love to see, is how do we, in a smart way, rapidly scale up actually a kind of public-private infrastructure for the governance of AI systems. I mean, people think of governance as antithetical to innovation, but all the research says if you're in a low governance environment, which I would say we are right now with AI, small amounts of governance, small amounts of regulation, standards, benchmarks, these are incredibly promoting of innovation, right? Innovation, I think, would boom if we had small amounts of governance. That certainly is what all the empirical literature suggests. So how do we rapidly start to get that when regulation takes 8 years to happen and it wouldn't be fast enough anyway? How do we get the right constraints in place to enable the technical geniuses to harness their brilliance in directions that are better for society, better for people?
I think on the business model side, I'm sorry, you can't sit and hope. Hope is not a good strategy. And we're looking at business models, and business models play into this. This is not a technical response either, but the business models we're bolstering in the AI market today are not ones that are very respectful of humanity. So we're building internet companies again with the big AI label on it. And internet didn't go very well for human rights, and if you look at the psychological impacts of what it's done to our children, but we're saying, hey, the most valuable AI companies and the ones that we should give all our money and time to are really just internet companies. And we have to adjust the business model. You cannot be the product. The consumer needs to be respected in the exchange, and that comes down to the companies building the technology. There has to be a distribution of accessibility. And if AI is not made accessible to everyone, we are going to have a problem. It's going to be an objective issue. It's going to be a humanity issue. You need to have systems that work for everyone, that people have access to and can personalize and engage in the creation of. I think one of the greatest aspirations we have is we want everyone to engage in the creation of superintelligence. Like, we should all be participating in that story in some fashion. And these ivory towers never end well. And we're repeating history with a new technology. And the business model alludes to me that we're okay with a negative outcome. We're just going to say that's tomorrow's issue.
So I'm maybe repeating everything that has been said, but maybe in a different way. So when it comes to the AI, the solutions and the problems are not just only technical, but also societal. We want technical robustness from the AI systems, but we also need societal resistance from them. So when I was at Nissan working on AI RMF, we really pushed for a socio-technical approach. And that's because the AI systems are not just about data, algorithm, and compute. They are a complex interactions of the data, compute, and algorithm with a human, with the environment that's being operated, the human that's being impacted. So just repeating that we need all the different voices of in the technology development, also the voices from the community that study the impact of the technology. You mentioned about learning from the history, and I just say the story about the cookies, that it was invented so that our shopping cart doesn't get lost as we are hopping from the site to site. And had anybody thought about the privacy implications of that as we are living in that privacy nightmare? I'm sure there had been technical solutions. So the approach really should be in building more resilient technology, and include as many solutions in the development of the technology as possible. Because at the end of the day, we all want a technology that's easy to use, difficult to do the hard thing, easy to do the right thing, difficult to do the wrong thing, and easy to recover if something bad happens. And that is the lesson from internet, that it's not easy to use. It's always the user's fault for anything that bad happened, and we don't know what to do about it. So I think those lessons has been heard, and I think a lot of community are working on this and kind of building the right safeguards into the model, but also as part of the responsible use of the AI, and yes to the governance of the AI systems, and hopefully working towards a more interoperable global governance for the AI systems, because the data and algorithm don't know borders.
I know we've been asking a lot about the AI risks today, perhaps much to the chagrin of some AI enthusiasts in the audience. I do want to end on an optimistic note, which is I'd love to hear briefly from each of you one sort of unrealized potential from artificial intelligence. I do feel like we hear a lot about the benefits in various fields. I wonder, from what you all have seen and the work you're doing, what's the unrealized potential with AI right now?
Maybe to me, I think being able to deliver education at scale in the language of choice of the kid worldwide, I think is an amazing opportunity. You're beginning to see it in reality with Khan Amigo and Khan Academy now being available in multiple languages. And the use of AI to guide children in achieving learning objectives and genuine learning, right here in the US, but also elsewhere, I think is a great example of technology, of AI technology being deployed at scale. And coming back to this point about governance and public policy, I think there's a really important role here for promoting these kinds of technologies almost as digital public goods that you could make available, not just here in the US, but abroad, so that you have the power of this innovation being made available to uplift humanity as a whole. So I think that this is really, to me, there's lots of kids that need access to teachers, they don't have this type of access, and this access is going to be made possible. So I think that's something I'm truly excited about.
I'm excited for it to live in my pocket and have AI that I can take with me anywhere that I own. It's personalized. It's not going to some data center and being trained on my personal information. I think once that happens, we start to get to personalized medicine, preventative medicine, treatments in real time. You already see things like Neuralink and what they're doing. I think the privatization and localization of these models is going to lead to experiences where we prevent disease, treat disease like we never have before. And we're really, I think, headed the right direction towards that.
I would first just say that, thanks for that question and importance of the benefits, because in the AI risk management and also many of the standard definition of risk is a compound combinations of the probability of an event happening and the consequence of that. And consequence can be positive or negative. So risk should not be just to be taken as a negative consequence. So as part of the risk management, the risk of not using technology should be part of the calculation. So thanks for talking about the benefits of that. You mentioned about precision medicine, and on sort of a personal note, I lost both of my parents, one of them to a sort of a rare disease and another one to cancer, one of them at early ages of my life. So I hear from my my friends about my age that sometimes complain about taking care of their parents or all of the the things that they have to deal with, and I remind them that the joy of seeing our parents getting old and taking care of them is no less than joy of seeing our children grow and being responsible citizens of the society. And I really think that nobody should be left out of that joy. So I would really hope to see more advances in AI in cure, particularly cancer cure.
David, you want to close this out?
So yeah, no pressure on that one. Hopefully the mic will hold out. One thing to say is most of the risks we've talked about, negative risks, are the flip side of benefits, right? So that's one of the challenges with AI is almost anything any of us have said, right? Precision medicine, that's wonderful right up until your insurance company gets a hold of it. And suddenly they're changing your rates on the basis of those kinds of things. Or a drug company finds out, oh, we can jack the price up on you because you're going to need this, right? So I think one of the challenges is that AI can be used in so many different ways depending on what we humans do. But the positive that I would toss out is one that I think doesn't get discussed enough. And that is the power of AI to improve what many people here at the Expo would refer to as situational awareness. The understanding of the threats that are posed to me or my company or my family, and the opportunities that are in front of me. I mean, we live in such massively information-rich environments that we have no way of keeping up with all of it. We can't know all of the opportunities that are available to us. We can't know the risks that we're taking with some of the things that we do online. And to have AI in a sort of ubiquitous way informing our situational awareness, so we understand the consequences of the actions we might be considering. We see opportunities that never would have occurred to us. I think this could be transformative in empowering people to really live their lives the ways they want to. The obvious risk is that now you've opened the door to a sort of single vector to control people's understanding of what they could do. But the positive side of that, I think, could lead to people being able to take control and ownership of their lives in ways that I think right now so many people, not just in this country, but worldwide, feel disempowered and disenfranchised. And AI could reverse that if done with those goals in mind.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have. I'll say I host weekly conversations on all things tech, politics, and policy on the Politico Tech podcast, and would love for you to check that out wherever you listen to podcasts. Cannot thank our panel enough for such an enlightening conversation, and you all for being here today. So thank you.
Thank you.